everybody. Today I am here talking with Bill Gates about some of his favorite books about the environment. I'm very excited to dive into these. Thank you so much for taking the time. Let's jump in to this thick one here, Energy and Civilization by Václav Smil. So why is this one of your favorites, and what did you take away from it?
Well, this is an amazing book and very eye-opening. Energy we kind of take for granted. You just flip the light switch, the light turns on, you just, turn your car key, boom, off you go. And that's been nice because it's been reliable and cheap. Now with climate change, people are having to realize, wow, we are very dependent on these hydrocarbons that are causing this problem.
Yeah.
And so understanding the history of how, as we've advanced, that using energy has been super key to that, and therefore the scale of what we have to change. He is the expert, also a Canadian.
Yay.
It's just an incredible story of progress, the steam engine, the jet engine, and why it's not going to be easy to move away from it. Climate, we need to go from just talking about goals to actually having plans.
Yes.
And so somebody who's read this book will be able to relate to, wow, this planning for this is not going to be easy at all. So a great background book, and the expert making it easy to read.
To that point, though, of like how difficult this is going to be to plan out, I know you mentioned in your review of this book that he isn't as optimistic as you are about this same kind of, will we be able to get ourselves together in time to pull off what's starting to feel like we need a miracle. But why do you feel more hopeful than maybe he does?
Well, Václav's expertise is the history, the scientific frontier of, can we make a magic battery? Can we make a better nuclear reactor that will be cheap and will be super safe?
Yeah.
Nobody really knows how quick innovation can go, and we do need to get more R&D money, more venture capital money, because without innovation, Václav and I agree that the cost of solving climate will be so high, it'll be very hard to get, particularly countries like India that can say, hey, we're a lot poorer than you are. You've emitted all these gases for a long time. Until you are completely done, don't tell us that, say, our air conditioning that we need because it's getting hotter, that we should do that some more expensive way. Because my whole life has been about innovation. Microsoft and the foundation, we do a lot of vaccines. We've been able to bring childhood deaths down from 10 million a year to 5 million a year. So I've had a very positive experience that innovation is possible. And now, with people caring about climate, we need the smartest young people to go into these breakthrough areas and use the latest AI tools and understanding of materials. But it's hard to predict. But Václav would say without a lot of innovation, you're not going to do it. And then hard to predict how quickly we'll get those breakthroughs.
Right. So one of the reasons, I love reading for so many reasons, entertainment value, fun, escapism, but one of them is just, I so believe in like autodidacticism, like teach yourself things, learn things that you're not finding elsewhere. This is a bit more like a textbook, right? It's kind of chunky, and you've even said hard to get through. So why do you feel that like people still should push through this one? Like,
it's so interesting.
Did you find it like a slog, or were you like, no, this is great, I keep wanting to return to it?
I'm a pretty nerdy person. And the idea of, okay, when did they figure out about using water to power things? When did they learn about wind to power things? When the auto came along, what was hard about that? How quickly did that happen? This, if you want that broad history, you can, read it in pieces, or sometimes now I'm mixing where I read off the page and I listen to the audio.
Does he read them?
Good question. This one I actually just read on text, but
Okay.
I think new books coming out almost always have both the
Yeah.
audio and the text.
I love it when the author reads the audio.
Yeah, it's super nice.
Yeah, that's the idea.
Melinda did that for her book. She set aside like 4 days to.
Oh, and it's such an intense process. But
Yeah.
like, I wonder how your throat doesn't get sore. But regardless, our next book,
All right.
Sustainable Energy Without the Hot Air by David McKay. So what did this one teach you? Why do you love it?
Okay, so whereas this book teaches you about the energy infrastructure and how it got built up and what the inventions were, now this guy David, sadly he passed away, but he was a professor at Cambridge University.
Okay.
And this book is actually free. It's out on the web for free because
love that.
he thought that was so important for
Yeah.
people to realize what can we do? What does it look like to get to this 2050 desired state where there's no emissions? How could we possibly do that? And so he explains, for cars, what can we do? For planes, not as easy. So he takes the different segments and talks through, well, if we don't have nuclear reactors, how much do we need renewables? And are people willing to have all that land, both onshore and offshore? And so he's saying to the reader, hey, we're going to be using a lot of energy, and we can't rule out everything. If you don't like wind and you don't like nuclear, but you don't like climate change, you kind of put yourself in a box.
Right.
So, and he's very careful not to advocate. He's not pro-nuclear or anything.
Yeah.
But he's saying the energy we make has to add up to the energy we use.
Yeah.
And you start to get a sense of, okay, why is it that we use so much energy? Why does the U.S. use so much more? We use double what Europe uses, which is 10 times what poor countries use. So, quite readable. He's very careful. Anything that's complex, he sticks in the appendices. And so, if you want to know why planes, take energy mostly when they take off, that's in the appendix. And he's got some nice interactive things. So this is a pretty modern book, and really aimed at how hard is it going to be to get to zero.
I know I was reading a lot about planes because I'd heard a lot of people like planes are the worst thing you can do for the environment if you're like lucky enough that you get to be a person that flies a lot. And I was reading that like if you can, you should do a direct flight because a connecting flight, you have 2 takeoffs as opposed to 1. So now I'm very intrigued to read this one. I know that you said that if someone is going to read one book on energy, it should be this one. Why this one?
Well, if you care about climate, that equation of how much energy do we use, and will that change? And in some cases, like light bulbs, we did come up with LEDs and we use less energy there. But in most cases, like driving a car around, there isn't going to be some breakthrough that making a car go up a hill is going to be more efficient. You just need that energy, and therefore, okay, where is it going to come from?
Okay.
And a little bit we have to think, okay, what does 2050 look like, and then make a plan.
Yeah.
It's only 30 years, which is not that long, really.
Okay.
In terms of how quickly we build up all the power plants and things, that's a pretty short time. Maybe you have 10 years to innovate and then 20 years to roll the stuff out to try to hit this pretty strict goal of zero.
Yeah.
And not just in the U.S., in the entire world, basically, we have to do it. So, pretty succinct, not nearly as long. Quite a few diagrams.
I see photographs.
And pictures.
Yep.
It is a topic that, having some charts and diagrams is very helpful.
Yeah. And I didn't know that was available for free, so that's awesome.
Yeah, it's
I will
a good deal.
Link that down below so anyone can check it out. Our final book is The Man Who Fed the World by Leon Hesser. I've never heard of this one.
Okay.
Why do you love it?
This is a miraculous story. This man is Norman Borlaug. And in the 1960s, the population growth, particularly in Asia, was so high that people thought, well, we're not going to be able to feed these people. In fact, there were people saying we should do forced sterilization and it was going to be a disaster. Well, what happened was that this man and some other plant scientists created what's called the Green Revolution, where they were able to take the key crops. He worked on wheat himself, but also the other two big ones, which are rice and corn or maize. They were able to come up with varieties that more than doubled the amount of food you'd get per acre of land. And so instead of there being starvation in the 60s and 70s, in fact, the calories per person went up. People were less malnourished because of the miracle of these magic seeds.
Right.
The reason this is so interesting today is that when we look at climate, the people who are going to suffer the most are the poorest.
Yes.
They live near the equator, they grow their own food, they're subsistence farmers, and they've done the least to cause climate change, and yet they're going to suffer the most.
Yeah.
Well, the answer for them is we need a second green revolution.
Right.
And so understanding, and this is a very uplifting story, way easier to read, not a single equation in the entire book. And this is a Midwest person who was sent down to Mexico to help out and miraculously realized what could be done. And then he was an advocate going to India saying, you've got to adopt these seeds. And it has a super happy ending. So we need to repeat this time making crops that can deal with the heat of climate change and the fact that sometimes you'll have less rain, sometimes you'll have floods. But the biggest innovation to reduce climate suffering, because even if we try and change things, we're going to have warming is going to keep going up. We have to reprise the miraculous work that he did. And so it's an amazing story. It should be better known. You can argue this man saved more lives than anybody who's ever lived. It's either him or somebody who invented a lot of vaccines, individually are responsible for literally hundreds of millions of people being alive.
Why do you look up to him, Norman Borlaug?
Well, his values, Norman Borlaug. He was a very straightforward, very little ego, loved to go out in the field and look at plants, super hands-on, Midwesterner who, was always amazed at what he was able to do and how he built these teams. And that negative view, a guy named Paul Ehrlich wrote a book called The Population Bomb, talking about all the starvation that was coming. And yet, this plant farmer was able to make sure that didn't happen. And we can do it again. You get into some of the issues about how you make new seeds, some of which are controversial, but understanding that it did happen, a great story. To me, of the heroes of the history of the world, he's definitely in the top 10 and should be better known. He did get a Nobel Prize for the work he did.
Oh, good. Well deserved.
So somewhat recognized towards the end of his life.
I obviously haven't read this one yet, but I have read some stuff from Wendell Berry on farming, and I really enjoyed reading that. So this maybe will be up my alley. I know that with all three of these books, very clearly one of the themes is innovation. And you've talked with me today about making a plan. Like, what is our plan going to be? So I guess I want to ask you, what is your plan and how does it link to innovation for fighting the climate crisis?
Well, driving innovation, you've got to push on lots of things. You've got to have more government R&D money just for people at universities to mess around. We've seen in health the fact that the U.S. puts over $30 billion a year into just that research level has been fantastic. Now for energy, we should get to something like that. Then once you have ideas in the lab, you need these venture capitalists to take things that are super risky and help them get money, help them build a company around it. And then the government has to create demand. At first, the cement that doesn't involve greenhouse gas emissions, call it green cement, it'll cost extra money. So you want people who care about climate to try and, both companies, individuals, to create a market. Now there's a type of beef that's made from plants.
Yes, Beyond Meat is the only beef I eat.
Oh, good.
In Canada, I've only seen it at Tim Hortons and A&W.
Oh, fantastic.
But I will only eat those.
Well, you're good. You are leading the way. And in fact, because of people like you, the quality of those products is going to keep improving, and the price will go down. Eventually, actually, the hope is that it'll be less expensive. So whether it's animal welfare or greenhouse gases, or they can make the ingredients somewhat more healthy. So anyway, that it's kind of exploded, and we need consumers for a lot of these product categories to help drive the demand.
Right, voting with your dollar, that kind of idea.
Right, and we need advocacy. I mean, even in Canada, some of the provinces are less engaged on, okay, what does it mean for them in terms of their oil resources. These are not easy issues because there are livelihoods there.
Yeah.
And yet, this idea of taking a little bit of pain today to make the world a lot better in the future, it really, I hope we can do it, but innovation will make the pain, the difficulty, a lot less. And so that's my big hope, is that all these different levers that push for innovation, we have to push on every single one, because we almost have a deadline to innovate. Usually with innovation, you just wait around. Okay, when you come up with the cancer drug, great. I hope I don't get cancer in the meantime. But with energy and climate, it's got to be the next 10 years. Have got to be quite magical.
I love that. So we are talking today because of the annual letter. In the annual letter, you and Melinda, who I got to talk to a couple months ago about her new book, but you and Melinda talk about the issues that you're trying to tackle over the coming year and years. Could you let everyone know about this year's annual letter?
Yeah, so we're 20 years since the creation of the foundation. In the year 2000, I saw that Microsoft stock was super valuable, and Melinda and I said, okay, let's make a foundation, and we picked education and health, particularly in poor countries. And, we get to look back and say, okay, in the health area, things went even better than we expected. We took big risks, but they paid off. Education, some good results, but not as dramatic, still committed to that area. And then the two that we add, Melinda talks about gender, which of course her book sort of explains why she's come to believe in that so deeply. And then I talk about climate, which is more my science background and books like these. And so, we say that because things have gone well, we're willing to really try risky, high impact things. We call it swinging for the fences. I guess that's a baseball metaphor. And our co-trustee, Warren Buffett, he is a big baseball fan, so that kind of makes sense. But we reflect on that, taking a long-term approach to these problems, that's where we've seen success. Some things you start them now, like a new vaccine, it can take over 10 years. A vaccine for HIV, we're working hard on that, but it's taken longer than we expected. Polio eradication, it's taking longer than we expected, but we're not going to give up. We're going to stay committed. So the foundation's been an amazing learning process for the two of us, and it's a joy to work together on these tough issues.
For anyone who's watching, other than reading these 3 books, what do you think that people can do themselves from home that can help the climate crisis? Because I think that sometimes people can think, well, it's really not up to me. It's up to the government, or it's up to people that have billions of dollars to donate for innovation. What do you think?
Well, number one, I'd say, is advocacy. Politically, these issues hang in the balance. It's easy to think, gosh, let's solve that problem later. And, I'm glad that over the last 3 years, the activism, including young people like Greta, are trying to keep this issue in the forefront. You can be, as a consumer, using a bit less energy, and buying like this plant-based meat, which is now getting more and more available. You should look at your car. At some point, although there's a little premium price now, over the next 10 years, that will go down. So we should all push towards electric cars. What that does is it means that if your electricity network is getting greener, then as you drive, you're not causing greenhouse gas emissions. For people who are considering careers, we're trying to get more people to go into this area, get the enthusiasm up, and get the funding, so there really are lots of jobs. People who have enough capital to invest, they can put money into a venture capital fund. There are so-called offset things that the world needs to learn more about, how well those work. Right now, planting trees, it's not clear the impact that has, but there will be in the years ahead offset funds that if you put money in, you can get certification that, okay, something was done to reduce the burden. So, a lot of ways that people can get involved and feel like they're
helping this
making
effort.
it happen.
Yeah. Well, as you said, we need a couple of magic years. So first up, read these books.
Yeah.
Then, if you can, go and chase a career that utilizes what you learned in these books. Thank you so much for spending time with me. If you guys want to read the annual letter and hear a bit more about what the foundation is doing, that will be linked down below along with these books. Again, thank you so much. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.